1 year of military conflict in Ukraine, or special military operations as the Russian side would put it. How has this conflict, this extreme military conflict, looking like the First World War trench warfare developed? How did it develop from the initial pushes towards Kiev and Kharkiv until the loss of Mariupol and the Ukrainian counterattack until today's severe battles in Bakhmut? We will cover a quick recap of this 1 year war using deep state maps. This is a very common source used by many analysts. This is a pro-Ukrainian source, a pro-Western source, so nobody can accuse us of using Russian propaganda in this video. Myself, I am an economist. I'm also a Sufi mystic. I have been covering this war on a daily basis, posting news on TikTok, also following both Russian and Ukrainian and Western sources of this war, mainly military sources. So this war is very heavy. Many people have lost their lives. It's a tragedy. Sometimes it has been very difficult spiritually to cover this war, but I think it's important because this has the potential to escalate into something larger that might affect all of us, and we are feeling the consequences of sanctions such as inflation and these kinds of things in the Western world. So let's start by scrolling back the clock a little bit to 2022. Let's see here. In the beginning stages of the war, Russia came in from many sides. They came in from the south, here, from the east, and from the north, until they got a half-moon concave around Kiev and also around Kharkiv. Now, Russia met a lot of resistance here in Kiev. You have maybe seen videos of the Hostomel airport battle, and you have probably heard about Bucha and these kinds of things. So in the beginning stage of the war, there was a lot of Western news on Russia is incompetent. Russian military convoy has stopped. It's running out of fuel, yada, yada, yada. And this war has been heavily propagated in terms of propaganda from both sides. So it's really difficult to know what's going on. Let's try to be as neutral as we can. Now, Russia pushed in here. They met a lot of resistance here from Ukrainian sources and also Foreign Legion and actually ex-special forces. We know that some ex-Delta Force, Navy SEALs and British SAS were, covering this city in terms of like snipers and stuff. So Russia pushed back. Now, what was the intention of this attack from the Russian side? That's something we intend to cover in another video where we talk about winning conditions, because it's not really clear to see who is winning and who is losing in this war. There are no black and white simple answers to that. And we don't also know always the military objectives of the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. So that's difficult to say. But I see the assault on Kiev as one of two things. Either Russia tried to take the city by military force, well, then Russia would be incompetent because they had way too little troops to take Kiev with some 100,000. I think Russia had some 200,000 troops in total when they came in here from the east and from the south and from the west and north. So either they are super incompetent or Russia didn't really intend to take Kiev. They just intended to come in here from the north with their, let's say, less experienced troops to draw Ukrainian defenses here, while in reality the elite and more experienced soldiers took Kherson in the south and also pushed in here in Donbass. Maybe it was a diversion type of maneuver. I guess we won't know the answer to that really soon. But if Russia intended somehow to scare the Ukrainian government, Zelensky regime, to a surrender, then by coming with so many force around Kiev, then you can say that this was a failure, a loss from the Russian side, because Ukraine did not surrender. They kept on defending and managed to push Russians back. However, during this time, there were intense battles around this city of Mariupol. And if we zoom in here a little bit, and we look at, for example, until May Yeah, here. So they surrounded Mariupol. You have probably seen videos of the Azovstal plant where many people were trapped there, and Russia just kept on shelling and shelling and shelling until they captured Mariupol somewhere around May. And this was a major victory by any objective means to assess for the Russian side. They managed to take this port city and therefore have control of the entire Sea of Azov. So now Ukraine has no way to get into the Sea of Azov without going through Russian territory. So this was maybe one of the major accomplishments, you can say, for the Russian side. Let's zoom out a little bit again. And if we go to June. Now in June, Russia started pushing heavily here, capturing the city of Liman, and also heavy fighting in Sievierodonetsk and Lysychansk until somewhere in June and July. They managed to capture Sievierodonetsk here and also Lysychansk, so that until in July, here, Russia had captured Sievierodonetsk and Lysychansk, and this was a kind of major victory and milestone in this war for the Russian side, because now they controlled large portions of Luhansk. So remember that the Donbass is divided into Donetsk and Luhansk, and Sievierodonetsk and Lysychansk were the large sort of cities in the Luhansk Oblast, which was not controlled by Russia. But I think at this point the Russian Ministry of Defense or something like that announced that they control Luhansk Oblast. So now Donetsk is remaining. So they need to push up here to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, but the Russian forces are pretty far away from that. Now during this time in the summer, Ukraine counterattacked a lot here around Kharkiv, and they had also managed to push back the Russian forces here around Kherson. So the Russian forces moved closer to Mykolaiv, but they were pushed back by many Ukrainian counteroffensives. So you can see some gains here from the Ukrainian side. They managed to take back their territory, and that's one of the winning conditions of the Ukrainian sides. We want to take back our land. So the green here is land that Russia once controlled, and Ukraine managed to push back. And also here in Kharkiv, there were many Ukrainian counterattacks. Remind you that Kyiv is the largest city in Ukraine. Kharkiv is the second largest city with more than 1 million people living here. So Russia were at the outskirts of this city. Ukraine managed to push them back until we are at the stage of August, where you have kind of, at this point in August, hit a stalemate where the front line is starting to crystallize here from the south up to the east, the Donbass, and up to Kharkiv. And at some point here in September, there was this major Ukrainian counteroffensive, as you can see. So the Ukrainians got a lot of aid, and through all of this period, the Ukrainians got help from all of NATO, the United States pouring billions and billions into arms, ammunition, anti-tank weapons, anti-air weapons. We think also Ukraine got some old MiGs and old Soviet-era tanks that somehow existed in the West. They managed to successfully counterattack and push back the Russians a very, very large chunk away from Kharkiv and also surrounding areas of Kharkiv. Now this can be taken as a Ukrainian victory, definitely. However, many sources claim that Ukraine suffered heavy casualties, way in the favor of the Russian side. The exact casualty numbers we don't have. We have only estimates from different military sources. But Russia had this kind of attitude to just go back, and then when Ukraine goes in and takes a territory, Russia shells that territory so that Ukraine maybe takes a town or a city, but they encounter a lot of losses in terms of manpower and equipment while they do so. This is also something that has been confirmed by American elite soldiers who volunteer in Ukraine that when they go and take a town, Russia retreats, then they go into the town and Russia shells them. So it was a victory from the Ukrainian side to take back their land. They want their land back, okay, clear. But the Russian side has said that they want to demilitarize Ukraine, so they can inflict a lot of casualties on Ukraine by doing so. So that is a small victory also then for the Russian side. And now in September and going to the fall of of 2022, we are heading at a major stalemate, and we are seeing Russian counteroffensive here close to the Zaporizhia region and Kherson. And at some point, Ukraine took back Liman in Luhansk. They managed to take back the eastern side of Kherson, and also parts north here, close to not far away from Zaporizhia, but in that sort of region. Let's look at say November here. So at this point, General Armageddon had conceded the sort of northwestern side of Kherson. They retreated to the other side of the river here to save their troops again. Ukraine managed to successfully counterattack and take back Kherson, but Russians shelled them a lot when they came in here, so Ukraine suffered enormous amounts of casualties by doing so. And now we are at a major stalemate situation. Also in the east, Russia has retreated from this area here. Ukraine retook it, but suffered heavy casualties. And during this time, a very, very large battle has been going on in the city of Bakhmut. And Bakhmut is the biggest offensive or biggest battle in this entire war. Bakhmut is here. It's a small city. It's much smaller than Mariupol, much smaller than Sievierodonetsk and Lysychansk. So Bakhmut is maybe, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000, that amount of inhabitants, whilst Mariupol is more than 400,000. So, and Kherson is also very large. So it's not a big city in terms of number of inhabitants, but it is important because it's kind of a meeting point, and also Ukraine has a lot of soldiers here, and there are many Foreign Legion soldiers fighting in the Battle of Bakhmut. So at some point, the Battle of Bakhmut, during probably the fall of 2022, maybe even started at the summer, both sides started focusing a lot on this area of Bakhmut and pouring their soldiers into Bakhmut. Now, if we look at at this point, Russia starts pushing towards Bakhmut, and we are now moving forward to this current time period. There is a clear front, and these areas have started looking like the First World War. Heavy casualties on both the Ukrainian side and Russian side. Based on many estimates, it's likely that Ukraine has encountered more casualties than the Russian side. But one starts seeing a clearer and clearer sort of a front line of the Battle of Bakhmut, where Russia is starting to push in and trying to create surrounds in the Battle of Bakhmut. So if we just look at Bakhmut very quickly this year. So this is from January 2023. Russia is pushing here. You see, starting to surround on the south side, and also they are going to come in here in the north, taking Yahidne and Berhivka. Yeah. Until we are in today's situation where there's a operational encirclement or tactical encirclement of the city of Bakhmut, because there is this road. There are only this road and this road more available for the Ukrainians to retreat. And according to the Wagner group, there are some 90 battalions of Ukrainian troops here, so that's like 50,000 troops. I've heard estimates as far as 100,000 Ukrainian troops. So if these troops get surrounded, it's a catastrophe for the Ukrainian side. They are going to lose a lot of men into captivity or something like that. And many sides, myself, I made a TikTok video about this 1 to 2 weeks ago, that Zelensky should retreat with these troops away from Bakhmut. Because even if the city is small, surrounding 50,000 troops is a catastrophe. And many analysts think that the Battle of Bakhmut will be the decisive battle of this war. Let's see. We don't know that yet. But it's turning out to become the Stalingrad of this war. So this is the situation where we are right now. Ukraine has retaken a lot of areas. It's still unclear what Russia's goal was in these areas, if it was just to draw Ukrainian troops and retreat so that they don't suffer many casualties, or if they actually wanted to conquer them, so to speak. Then Russia is incompetent, because they had too little troops here, too few troops here, and too few troops here to really capture and hold it. Russia would need like 1 million soldiers or something like that to try to capture and hold Kyiv and Kharkiv, because they are so large cities. And if I know those numbers, I'm sure that the Russian military experts also know those numbers. So I guess that the truth of that matter, we won't know until the future. But the situation right now is that Ukraine is suffering heavy casualties. Zelensky today admitted that Bakhmut is looking really grim. Western media admits that Bakhmut is looking really grim. And even the American side that has really been pushing this war has sort of admitted that Ukraine cannot really retake all of these lost lands this year. So who is winning this war? There's not a clear winner or clear loser. There are victories that Ukraine has done. This is a pro-Ukrainian map, so you see the Ukrainian victories here in green. Russia has also done some victories, major victories in terms of inflicting casualties on Ukraine, destroying their air force, navy. Ukraine has no navy left, and large parts of Ukrainian military is wiped out at this point. It's a tragedy. Let's see how things progress. And yeah, my stance on the war has been from the start that there should be a negotiated settlement and a peaceful diplomatic solution between the two sides, so that no person has to lose their life. But that is not what the politicians wanted. So hope you enjoyed this video. Peace.